Let's do some preliminary work on our Minnesota Twins off-season shopping list. I don't know if you remember this as like a little kid. It's still a thing. They send out these like Christmas catalogs. Amazon still sends them out. And, you go through and you maybe circle the stuff you want, like my daughter has here, and let your parents know or your family know what toys you were interested in that year. Well, we're going to do that version of the Minnesota Twins and free agency here. Let's get into it. All right, we're here at MLB.com. This is the list we're going to work off of here. The 2022-23 free agents position by position. Now, some of these will be including guys who have options. So, keep in mind, not every one of these guys on the list is going to hit free agency. And there's going to be guys who are not offered arbitration, who are not on this list, who will be joining the list of players available as well. So just something to keep in mind there. All right, so starting with the catchers, I do feel like this is a position of need. I do like Ryan Jeffers, but he is not going to be the primary catcher on a first division team. I think if you are trying to compete, if you're trying to make the postseason, if you're trying to go deep into the postseason, you've got to improve on this position here. And our friend Gary Sanchez is a free agent. I'm not too interested in a reunion with him. I think they need to aim a little bit higher. I do think that Willson Contreras should be circled on this list here. Again, the Twins need a starting caliber catcher, in my opinion. I think Ryan Jeffers can be a really good backup or sort of a guy who splits time. Willson Contreras is good enough at the dish to validate some DH at-bats too. So I think that would be a really good target for the Twins. He is, as you see here, the top catcher on the market, so he's going to have a lot of teams going after him. Again, we're not going to really talk about, projected contracts at this moment. We're just getting into a very preliminary talk here, but he's certainly the guy that stands out to me. And one of the biggest standout free agents of this entire class, if I'm being honest, in terms of guys that would make sense for the Minnesota Twins. At first base, I don't think this is a really big position of need for the Twins, but the Twins just generally need to get better. So, a lot of these guys up here at the top in particular could help the Twins offense. Jose Abreu in particular, we've seen him do so much with the Chicago White Sox of late. Doesn't sound like he'll be coming back. But this 36 years old is a pretty big red flag. Now, as a Twins fan, we've seen Nelson Cruz come in at a much more advanced age than that. And this is a guy who, the power was down a little bit this year, but that was pretty common across baseball. We'll see what happens there. I think they should have some interest in him. But again, I don't think they need to go out and get a first baseman. They do need to go out and improve this offense, I think. And that's maybe a position where they could do it with a first base DH type guy like Jose Abreu. At second base, I don't think this is a really big position of need. You've got Polanco, you've got Arise, you've got Gordon. I think there's just better places to look. And honestly, this group of players doesn't inspire me too much beyond like a bench guy. But really, if you're looking for a bench guy, you're probably looking for somebody, hopefully you can play shortstop anyway. And shortstop is a huge need. I think we're all hoping that the Twins can find a way to bring Carlos Corrrea back. I do expect he will opt out of his contract. But it's going to be extremely difficult. The Twins are not a team that has, given out these mega long-term deals. And Carlos is going to want one of those. Trea Turner, Xander Bogaerts, Dansby Swanson, Tim Anderson. I think probably his club option is going to get picked up. But these other three guys, there's a nice quartet. But maybe just like last year, the Twins can kind of pick up the pieces at the end. If one of these four guys doesn't get what he's looking for, maybe it's Corrrea again. If it happened once, it can happen twice. The shortstop is clearly a massive, massive need for the Twins. They need to get one of these guys who is a legit, excellent starting caliber shortstop. That's the biggest list, shortstop with an exclamation point, a circle, a star, whatever you want to do on this one. The Twins need a shortstop badly. Third base, they're pretty set there. I think Jose Miranda can still handle that position, certainly. But, they have Gio Urshela. They can just give him what they need to in arbitration to keep him around. He's under team control if they want him. But I think this list of players really hammers home that, what's behind door number 2 is not going to be better than Gio Urshela. So I think this really helps solidify the fact that they should be bringing Gio Urshela back. He's going to make good money in his last year of arbitration, but I think, again, looking at what else is out there, I think it makes a lot of sense. And he played great. He was a good guy. I would love to see him back next year. In the outfield, again, the Twins need to improve their offense, but there's not a whole lot of need in the outfield in terms of like a star starting caliber player, in my opinion. If they would want to sort of try to see if Joey Gallo can get back on track to where he had been in the past, maybe he's an interesting buy low option. Some of these other guys may be interesting platoon bats, but really this, again, the real need is to get someone better in center field than Alberto Celestino backing up Byron Buxton. But the options aren't outstanding. Center field is just a difficult position to address. And, I'm thinking Brandon Nimmo is really good, but he's not going to want to come into a place where he's not going to be the guy in center field. The Twins have a lot of corner outfielders. Maybe a trade, again, that's another thing to keep in mind. We get really fixated sometimes on these free agent lists and forget about the trade market. I expect the Twins once again to be active there. So we'll see. In right field, clearly every team in baseball would love Aaron Judge. So we'll just circle him. Hey, again, if the Twins landed Corrrea, they could galaxy brain. Maybe there's some way they can find themselves into Judge. I don't know. We'll circle him anyway. Pie in the sky. And then at DH, I don't love the idea of a set DH, and a lot of these guys can still play in the field. But I don't know that any of these names really intrigue me much in terms of trying to get a DH or a guy who can play a little bit of outfield. I think the Twins, again, are pretty set in the corners, wishing for better health from Kirilloff and Larnach. But additionally, we saw Matt Wallner come up, and he'll be in the mix too. There's other guys. This team is going to have a lot of corner outfield. And I'm not saying you turn anybody away who would be an offensive upgrade. I think they need to get better with the lineup. But I like the rotation of a DH. And again, kind of going back to the point I was making on Contreras is he could DH a little bit. You get a bunch of guys to mix and match in there. All right, and let's get into the pitching. While the Twins probably are as set as they've been really with both the rotation and the bullpen entering a season in quite some time, but still certainly upgrades need to be made on the pitching staff. And I think, we'll point out again, a lot of these guys have options. I don't expect a guy like Nola to be a free agent. Sonny Gray's on this list. We know pretty well that the Twins are going to pick up his modest option. So keep that in mind when looking at this list. Should also point out that these are listed by the wins above replacement from Fangraphs over the past 2 seasons. So if you're wondering how these are ordered, that's it. And it's kind of an interesting thing because I think on this list, you want to be aiming anywhere above Sonny Gray. With Louis Varland, Simeon Woods-Richardson, Ronnie Henriquez, all debuting late. I think that's where your rotation depth is coming from. And I don't think you really need to be, looking for Bundy Archer types this year. You want to be looking for the top of the rotation type guys. Rodón definitely sticks out. If you follow the channel, I was really interested in him, really believed in that big season, and now he's backed it up. But he was kind of a value guy compared to his performance, and that's not going to be the case now that he's sort of proved it. Again, I don't think Nola's going to be a free agent. Kershaw and DeGrom at this point in their careers, I think they're only going to be interested in either staying where they've been or, also having a shot at a World Series. I don't think, the Twins can do much to try to get them here. But Eovaldi is a guy that I find interesting. Throws really hard, great stuff. Wainwright, I think kind of the same thing with Kershaw and DeGrom. He's going to be pitching for the Cardinals, or he's probably going to hang them up. Bassett and Anderson, are 2 guys that really don't completely jump off the page like maybe a Rodón would, kind of in that more Eovaldi, but they would add to this rotation and really help out. But, again, this is kind of like some other positions we talked about. This is a good example of there's just not a ton of guys out there on the free agent market. Again, like Verlander, I expect him to pick up that player option with Houston. It's a hefty contract, but I expect him one way or another to stay with the Astros. There's some interesting guys. Our old buddy Kyle Gibson and Corey Kluber and Martin Perez. Sean Manaea, who is a guy who I had some interest in as a possible trade target, but pitched pretty poorly for the Padres. Quintana had a good year. So there are plenty of names, but if you're kind of in that same agreement with me that you want to aim higher, that you don't really, the rotation depth isn't as much of a concern. You want to get the top of the rotation filled out more. There just isn't a ton of options. And again, this may be more of a position that the Twins try to target in a trade again this offseason. We'll see. And then taking a look quick at the bullpen again with Jorge Lopez, who I still think is going to be a nice piece, even though he was disappointed with the Twins. And obviously Joan Duran. The Twins have a nice setup. Some other guys established themselves, like Griffin Jacks this year. Caleb Thielbar had a great year. But still, you always kind of want to be adding. And I do think Taylor Rogers might be an interesting kind of buy low option, to solidify the left side of the bullpen. A guy who's obviously interested, familiar with Minnesota, coming off a down year for sure. Started with the Padres and then went over to Milwaukee. But still a guy I think that could help the Twins. Michael Fulmer, I really like the way he pitched after coming over from Detroit, a guy who's got good stuff, a good pitcher. Chris Martin, who ended up with the Dodgers, he's getting up there, but he's always been such a great strike thrower. So there's a lot of guys that could factor in to a being bullpen upgrades. But luckily, I don't think this is as big of a need as usual for the Twins, but they could. It's kind of similar to the rotation, I think, too, in that, I don't know that adding a bunch of sort of lower end guys really makes a ton of sense in terms of trying to build up the bullpen. I think you can find those guys internally. Here's our old buddy Trevor May. Kind of had a rough time with the Mets. So you let me know which of the names really jump out to you. Again, this was a very preliminary rundown. We will definitely be digging deeper into some of these names as the offseason progresses. Thank you so much to all the members. Here you see on the screen are listed the premium members. Thank you so much for watching this. We'll talk to you again soon.